Our first panel, AI and Digital Transformation. The panel will be moderated by Anna Acheval, Senior Manager, Globalization and Localization AMD, and she'll introduce her fellow panel members to you. Anna and team, come on up here.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome back from the break. How are y'all enjoying the summit so far? Good stuff. Okay. How many of you have been hearing a lot about AI lately? A lot. All right. And how about digital transformation? Nick just said this morning, you either love it or you hate it, right? So digital transformation and AI are important topics that are affecting many businesses today, especially within supply chain. So we're thrilled to have this panel talk through it. We only have a short period of time together, only 50 minutes. So we're going to break this session into 4 quick parts. We're going to talk through the definitions. We are going to dive into the specific supply chain areas. We're going to do Q&A, and then of course, we're going to do a quick wrap up. So with that, we'd like to welcome our esteemed panelists. We're going to be doing a quick round of introductions. Please let us know your name, your company, your title, and a quick word or phrase that comes to mind when you hear digital transformation or AI. We'll start with you, Manju. We'll go this way.
Thank you, Anna. My name is Manju Devdas. I'm the founder, CEO of Pluto 7. We are an AI platform company. We implement AI for enterprise and business as part of our offering. When we talk about AI, the words that come to my mind is people change.
Thank you. That's a good one. People change. Robert?
Robert Kachatrian, founder and CEO of FreightRight Global Logistics. We're a customs brokerage and a logistics company. And in the world of logistics and transportation, where we operate, when we talk about digital transformation, to me, it's all about laying the foundation. We're at like a groundwork level at this point.
I'm Barbara Bickham. I'm the founder and general partner of Trailin VC. We invest in diverse deep tech founders, blockchain, AI, quantum, IoT, Web3. When I think of AI, I think of data and digitized infrastructure, the next gen infrastructure.
Hi, everyone. Kimon Drakopoulos. I'm an associate professor at Data Sciences and Operations Department, and I'm the director of the AI for Business program at Marshall. 3 words that come to mind when I think about AI is paying my bills. That's what I do for a living.
I'm Sam Vahi, president for Advatix and chief solutions officer for the Growth Catalyst group of companies. Our focus is on improving supply chains across the board with consulting as well as solutions. One word that comes to mind when I think of AI is truly automating the mundane and focusing on what's more important than the value adds.
Great. Well, thank you. Those are definitely great phrases. We'll dive deeper into some of those later. And of course, we'll make sure we're keeping the bills paid. That's a good one. Well, we thought what better way than to start an AI panel than to have AI define AI for us. So if you can pull up the slide, we're not promoting any specific AI platform or tool, but I think you may assume some popular ones. So we did ask AI, what is the definition of digital transformation? And this is what it came up with. I'll just read it verbatim just to make sure. Digital transformation is the process of integrating digital technology into all areas of business, fundamentally changing how it operates and delivers values to customers. It involves a cultural shift that requires organizations to continually challenge the status quo, experiment, and get comfortable with failure. This transformation can include modernizing IT infrastructure, adopting new technologies like AI, and automation and rethinking business models to improve customer service and operational efficiency. Essentially, it's about leveraging technology to drive innovation and stay competitive in a rapidly evolving digital landscape. What do you think? That seems to be a comprehensive definition. What do you all think? Yes? Okay, then we asked AI, what is the definition of artificial intelligence? AI itself answered, artificial intelligence refers to the development of computer systems that can perform tasks typically requiring human intelligence. These tasks include visual perception, speech recognition, decision-making, and language translation. In essence, AI involves creating machines that can learn from experience, adapt to new inputs, and perform human-like activities. This technology is used in various applications such as virtual assistants that we're familiar with, like Siri and Alexa, autonomous vehicles, and advanced data analysis. So that was AI's definition of artificial intelligence. What do you all think? Barbara, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on the definition here provided by AI?
So AI was close to the AI definition. It's actually the capability of a machine to create knowledge or intelligence. So what is intelligence? Intelligence is the ability to learn or understand or deal with new and trying situations or reason. So AI is not quite at the intelligence level or reasoning level yet.
That's probably good. I see Professor Kimon nodding his head. Professor, would you like to add to that definition?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for your thoughts. I was thinking about the digital transformation portion of the definition. And over the past year, I've been working with the Greek government, advising them on AI strategy and digital transformation. And what I found to be like surprising to me is that digital transformation is not about as much about digitization, automation, etc. It's about changing people, changing the way they think, changing the way that they log their data, they clean their data, they value their data, they set metrics. So I would definitely emphasize the cultural shift part of that definition there.
That's definitely a good point about the human factor for sure. And Sam, would you like to add some additional insights to that part about the changing factor?
Yeah, so I just wanted to comment a little bit about the AI piece and the definition itself. I think that the issue with defining artificial intelligence is the word intelligence itself. And I think the definition of intelligence was the stumbling block for most people when they were trying to define AI. And as a result of that, back in the 60s, they created something called the Turing test, which essentially said if you can act in a way in which another person cannot tell whether it's a human or a computer responding to you, then it's truly intelligent. So if you're interacting with something, whether that's speech, whether that's visual, whether that's looking at something from a feedback perspective, or robotic, with things that typically machines don't do, but otherwise now machines can do, would be things that you would consider intelligent enough because they have to deal with the dynamics of the environment that they're in. And being able to react to that and respond to that is what is truly intelligence, and create that knowledge by itself over time.
Definitely interesting points, especially relating to that definition. And I know, Manju, I see you shaking your head. Please go ahead.
Yeah, ironically, I asked the same questions to Google CTO for AI in 2016 when I went and met him to discuss about how to apply it for supply chain and manufacturing. And he showed me a slide which said, observe, think, act. And I was like, wait a minute, I see same stuff in daycares, stop, think, act, right? And that kind of stuck in my head that, and as years passed by, there are various variations of observe, think, act. That's evolving. And also we all do this all the time, but we don't necessarily break it down like that because our neurons operate so fast that when a machine is doing, we get amazed. But when we do it, we take it for granted. So the machines are mimicking our biological evolution.
Definitely great points there, especially thinking of it from that level, just like we just had an earthquake recently, you guys stop, drop and roll, taking those steps as well. Robert, you had something to add to that?
Yeah, I think I'm okay with the definition of artificial intelligence as provided by artificial intelligence, but I think it's a little too benign. I think it oversimplifies the potential, and any decent definition, I think, should touch on the massive potential of artificial intelligence, and not just maybe in a positive way, but also the adverse possible effects, right? That, I mean, the phrase that catches my eye here is decision making, right? We're basically entrusting artificial intelligence with decision making. Obviously, you have to be very careful with the potential of that, and so this is okay, but definitely very simple. Yeah.
Definitely great insights, especially about decision making. I know we can go on about this part, but let's switch our gears. We're going to dive in to each of those segments, like you just said. So, what do you think are the top supply chain management areas that will be impacted the most by digital transformation in AI? Sam, as the President and Chief Solutions AI Officer, what are your thoughts on these areas of impact? Would it be demand forecasting, fulfillment, logistics?
Actually, all of them. We're looking at, evolution of AI and use of AI across the board. When we talk to companies that are dealing with challenges in supply chain, the core is, what is the problem that we're trying to solve, and how do you resolve that problem? And what are the tools that AI provides to be able to capture that information, learn from that information, and respond in a proactive way to it? So from a forecasting standpoint, we're using AI today through segmentation, classification models, and then using AI to actually learn the behaviors of those individual classifications. From an inventory optimization standpoint, the ability to understand where your inventory is, how much you need, where you need it, and also from a standpoint of being able to match your virtual versus physical counts. From a fulfillment standpoint, the use of AI and the techniques from a visual recognition standpoint, and using XR technologies and other technologies to be able to learn from visual information, to be able to process things faster and create ROI out of that AI. So instead of taking an hour to receive a pallet or 2 hours to receive a pallet, you can do it in 15 minutes. Can you do that? Can you take that through the end-to-end supply chain and reduce the time, reduce the cost, and increase the efficiencies? So same thing with logistics, which I'm sure the panel will talk through as well. So.
Interesting, especially touching on ROI. I know that's a big bottom line for a lot of us here. Kimon, would you like to expand on the ROI?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll start by saying that I'm the least expert in supply chains on the panel. I'm an AI person, but I'll speak based on my experience working with, again, the Greek government. I'll give 2 examples on how supply chain concepts relate to AI deployment. It's kind of like changing the supply chain questions. And the first one is, one of the first tasks that we had is we want to submit a proposal for a high performance computing cluster. How many GPUs are we going to need, and how much compute should we outsource to Amazon or to AWS? And that's like fundamentally an inventory problem. It's just very, very different from the typical ones. You don't just estimate demand, because only you have to solve computational problems, but it's a supply chain question. How do you design this? And the second example that I have that I experienced, one of my contributions there was during COVID. We developed this system for AI system for identifying travelers who are high risk. But the information on the system was coming from physical tests that the government was doing at the airport. So suddenly you see this cool interconnection between supply chain and the AI algorithm. If supply chain was not working properly, we wouldn't get information fast enough to train our models fast enough and react to the changes. So this is I think it's a very cool connection between the AI portion and the physical portion. And it's a new class of supply chain problems and inventory problems that show up there.
Thank you for that. And Manju, I know you also have a lot of experience with the application of AI in business. Would you like to expand on what Kimon had just said?
Yeah. So first of all, where will AI get applied? It's almost like I would flip it around and say, where will it not get applied? And you'll end up finding an answer that you'll end up applying everywhere. The question then becomes, to what degree and what's the business value and ROI, like the panelists mentioned. And there's a method to analyzing this. No two companies will have identical ROIs for a given problem. For some companies, it's forecasting is a more important problem. For other ones, it'll be inventory visibility, right? And you would think, what's a big deal with inventory visibility? Many companies lose money and margins just purely based on lack of inventory visibility. And when you identify patterns against them, you discover that one of the most popular toothpaste companies scraps off $60 million of toothpaste just because they don't know where the inventory exists. And this is a 100-year-old plus company. Like this, you'll find a lot of examples. So there's just like internet, 25 years back when internet started getting adopted, it's now everywhere and nobody even thinks about, which part of supply chain is affected by internet. AI is going to get bigger.
Definitely getting bigger, especially interesting that there's so much waste involved. I know, Professor, you had talked about where can AI help in terms of inventory management and fulfillment to help with such waste problems like this?
I think that fundamentally a big portion of these problems is being able to deal with uncertainty in a smart way and being able to estimate demand. So these models are serving exactly this purpose, being able to deal with uncertainty and helping you make decisions. And to some level, bypassing the human factor in decision making is the true contribution there. Like a good example, everyone has heard about the bullwhip effect in standard supply chain management. This is an example of if you use an AI system there, none of this would exist. So trying to bypass the human factor and the more arbitrary decision making will be a huge contribution.
Great. Go ahead, Sam.
I was just going to add to that, again, the key, the parts of it is where you're looking at variability in the demand and supply and managing some of that. The other aspect of it is, like you said, a toothpaste company that didn't know where the inventory was. The question is, how is that going to be solved with the variability issue? So that's where kind of the whole concept of using other capabilities where you've got visual access to the actual physical inventory and having that ability to do that virtual physical match to say, this is what inventory I have. What is it? Where is it? And how do I collect that information? The technology exists, the capability, and we've heard that over and over again this morning, that technologies exist. We have to be able to apply the technologies in the effective way. They don't have to be complex. They don't have to be sophisticated, but you have to pull them together in the right way to actually get that behavior and get the results that you want and get the ROI from it.
I was actually about to point to you, Robert, especially coming from a global forwarding and warehousing perspective. Definitely, please add to that.
Yeah, I think what everybody's touching on is this intersection of physical movement of goods and physical handling of goods and the data flow about the goods, right? And where I operate, where my company operates is exactly that intersection. So this is like the biggest opportunity I feel like for, and I would refer to it as digital transformation, not so much AI, because that's exactly where the most potential for transformation is. We were talking just earlier how adding a few different sensors on a package would give you so much more data on the movement of that package and basically transform that into movement of data, which is where a lot of these issues arise, right? You don't know where the package is. If you have the data about the package, but you don't know the physical location of the package, who cares if you have the data, right? Still end up scrapping that product. So again, in the world of physical movement of goods, it's a lot more about digital transformation and basically laying the infrastructure and figuring out mostly how to apply technology to existing infrastructure, right? I think we see with self-driving cars, you can't just build your own freeways. You have to make them work on the freeways we already have, right? So that's, I think, the biggest potential gain, at least in maybe medium long term.
Definitely interesting there, especially in terms of establishing the framework. Manju, I know you do that day to day for many companies. What are your thoughts do you think that the key decision makers have to keep in mind when establishing these frameworks?
Yeah, especially this year, and to some extent, thanks to ChatGPT, everybody started using it 18 months back, including the board of directors, CEOs, CXOs. And all of that experimentation now in their own personal life, plus however they used, is now translating into ROI questioning, business value questioning, journey questions. And when customers are now looking at it, and sometimes they are very direct, and I know many people don't want to hear this, but this is what happens in closed doors. We want to cut 30% of the workforce. We know AI can do it. How do you make it happen? Now, the question then you take a step back and look at it as, how do you, there is of course a lot of strategy conversations happen, technology conversations happen, but that's a mandate and there's a budget cut and it's going to happen. The question is, how soon can you make it happen? How do you embed that in the part of the business and so on? Now you can always look at it and say, oh, that's so bad. Like people are going to lose job, but that's not always true because there's always going to be new workforce that's going to come and replace the old workforce. And there's a framework that's needed for all of this, right? You can't just bring into a technology. Technology is the easiest part. It's the introduction into the physical layer, what Robert is talking about, the practical way into your process. That's the harder part. And we have seen this over and over again. And as we look at that mandate of 30% workforce cut in 2025, 2026, you look back at even US agriculture workforce 300 years back, it was 70%, 80% of US population. Today it's 2%. Where did all those people go? Are they not unemployed? No, they are unemployed, but the work roles changed. And a lot of it got taken over by mechanical automation equipments. And AI is going to do the same thing for knowledge workers. I live in the Bay Area and I see and hear this all the time, but I also visit factories. Coming back to this, the leadership and executives are struggling because there's a lot of complexity in understanding AI and it's coming at a fast pace. And the CFOs are connecting the dots and giving these mandates. And now there needs to be a digital transformation and workforce transformation, AI introductions, all happening in the same time. And 70% of these projects fail because people think about change management later. Because the person on the floor who is watching the truck, picking the box, if he doesn't adopt, doesn't matter how good your technology is.
Definitely some good points. Nick did mention earlier in the morning, showing that AI is projected to influence about 40% of professionals worldwide. So definitely change management is something that everybody needs to keep top of mind, as Manju said, not in the end of the thought process, but definitely being top of mind. So with that, it is a sensitive topic. Manju, what would you say to someone with the recent news who's been recently impacted? There's been thousands of layoffs, especially in the tech space, with layoffs in the past 2 weeks. So what would you say to some individuals and executive management about that?
Deeply experiment and understand how you'll use AI. The question is not whether you'll use AI, right? Unless you live in a remote forest where you're not connected to anything in the world. Yeah, so deeply understand how you'll use AI, right? And I think that's ironically, even people who have been in tech for a long time get so biased about the technology they use. They find it hard to believe an AI model is going to be PhD level by summer of next year and better. And when that happens, our fundamental belief that I'm an experienced person in, I don't know, forecasting and all those beliefs get shattered. And then you're competing with AI, which is not very useful. Yeah.
Really, thank you for that. Barbara, as you advise a lot of tech startups, what would you say to some of these individuals who are just starting out with all the change management and AI applications?
Well, startups fail, but a lot of startups are, AI startups specifically, are getting the majority of the money. So the question is, why is that? Because they're attempting to solve these problems, not only from a technological side, but also from a human side as well. There's the human piece of this. So I work with an energy company and we are short of labor. I worked in a restaurant. We did all the digitization in a restaurant. Virtual kitchens, they are short on labor. So how do you balance out what a computer can do and learn and be with the human element? And you're in areas, like I'm in an area in the energy space where it's not popular, but we need human people. So how do you balance that out? You have to learn AI, you have to know AI. I'm also in the CTO forum here in LA. I mean, they're all using AI to create all the software now. So as a developer and a creator of a company or a software, you have to know how to use this AI, but you still need a human intervention because depending on how you ask it, I don't know how you asked the AI, what is AI? But depending on how you ask it and who you ask, because there are 3 different ones right now that we know about, you're going to get 3 different answers. The same answer is not going to come out of the 3 AIs. So you also have to understand how you can go about interpreting those results until the AI can interpret the results, because it's not quite there yet.
Go ahead.
I think it's very important to keep in mind, well, in terms of workforce reductions, right? The economic cycle we're in, right? Right now, it's all about workforce reduction for a lot of companies, but not for all of the companies, right? There are still companies struggling to find labor. There are still companies struggling to find a workforce, and maybe hopefully a couple of years from now, we'll be back in the situation where we were in 21, 22, where everybody's struggling to find people. And that's where I think AI will have the opposite impact for everybody that's either affected now or, it's just starting out. Obviously, a lot of students here. You have to know how to use AI to, make yourself more valuable to a company. And the fact that, right now people perceive it as risk to their jobs is, I think, largely is just a factor of the economic cycle, right? Like Manju said, we had 70% of this country were farmers. And, just because we introduced, some equipment in farming doesn't mean all these people went away, right? They're still needed. They're still doing other work, and they just learned to use these machines and learned to use these tools. And that's exactly what's going to happen with AI. I don't see it as a far stretch that, 2 years from now, everybody that's lost their jobs now is going to be employed again, and we're going to need a lot more people. So it's just a tool to get there. Just maybe not right this time of the year.
I think back on the ROI question as well, we kind of had that earlier in the panel, but one of the words that was used earlier was agile or lean. And so like most of these companies I'm working with are very, very lean, right? We're not hiring hundreds of thousands of people. We may never hire hundreds of thousands of people. So this is the other shift that AI is creating, is that how can you operate and make decisions in a very efficient and effective way? How do you automate things in a very efficient and effective way so that you can maximize your ROI across your business in general, so that you're maximizing your revenues and your money in the end? Because that's what VCs look at, that's what M&A people look at, that's what banks look at, right? This is what all the kind of ROI conversation should be around at some levels.
Just going to add to that it's also about, like you said, the efficiency, right? It's adding to the throughput. And we have to look at that from that perspective. We're going through economic cycles. Things are going to change. There is no doubt. We're going through an evolution and transformation from a technology standpoint that is going to change the environment that we live in. It is going to change the way we do business. We can look at examples from a throughput standpoint. I mean, we've seen examples of agriculture over the last 50 years. The growth of production of food has grown 3.5 times faster than the growth of people, the population. Even though we think population is growing, food production has grown 3.5 times more, but there's still hungry people. So from that perspective, the point is that change is going to come. Change is going to happen. We have to adopt that change and transform the environments that we live in to be effective as we can, to drive that value that we can drive as an individual, as an organization, and as a country or a society.
One short comment from the point of view of an educator who is hopefully affecting the way the workforce is going to look in a couple of years. I heard the rest of the panelists talking about learning how to use the tools, learning how to use AI. when I was designing together with my colleagues the curriculum for our program, I was very stubborn about the students are not going to touch AI for the first 2 years. And obviously they complain all the time. But my point is that tools are always going to change. Exactly like you said, technologies are going to change. I think you need to spend a lot of time getting this mindset of quantitative thinking, critical thinking, learning to ask the right questions, right? Learning to define your metrics, your constraints, and then go into the tools. That's the point that I'm trying to make, is that AI is more than just the tools and the LLMs and the fancy neural nets. It's about thinking and then defining your problems.
Definitely good to establish that framework
Yeah.
up front. That's Nick mentioned earlier, obviously the theme of this summit is about resilience and agility. What do you have to say to some of the people who say AI is all hype? Manju.
When I wish I could go back 15, 20 years and be Nick's student. Some of the books that he writes, right, around network optimization, the geopolitical aspects and AI, I wish I could learn and live that, but it is what it is. So when we think about these incredibly complex topics of network optimization, and when you think about uh, why has it been so difficult to optimize these networks continuously? Whether it's because of COVID, or whether because of geopolitical issues, a Russia war, a Middle East crisis situation, you want to reconfigure your supply chain, but it tends to be incredibly hard. And we deal with large enterprises all the time who bought all kinds of softwares, they hire all kinds of strategy consultants, and yet it takes a year or 2 years to make that shift. And this, because there's a lot of people and process elements to it. Technology is an aid, but technology by itself doesn't come and transform everything. But if you use the technology wisely, like AI, for example, a network optimization, if you cannot optimize between 3 nodes, forget about 3,000 nodes. If you can really optimize, use AI to optimize better than your demand planner, your inventory planner, let's say positioning inventory in those 3 nodes, now think about the entire global optimization and goods movement and getting to your EBITDAs and profits. So while it's real, the AI, but also people tend to extrapolate it too far, thinking that either AI can do everything or AI is not accurate. Reality is the magic is in the middle, and human is going to be in the middle, work with AI, and push the boundaries of your network optimization, people effectiveness, labor efficiencies, cost reduction, price optimization, all anchoring to maybe just one problem of your inventory positioning. So it's not going to be this binary answer of AI did everything or AI didn't do everything. It's going to be a mix coexisting with people.
Definitely a great point. I think people think that there's already that red easy button that you can just push and activate AI. We're not there yet. So definitely it's really important to keep in mind to have a human in the loop as you are going through these framework establishment process. Go ahead, Barbara.
So Anna, here's some venture capital hype. In Q1 of 2024, so that was earlier this year, AI venture funding grew to $12.2 billion, a 4% increase from Q4. So just from one quarter to the next quarter, it grew. So is that AI hype? Maybe. But why is that much money flowing into that particular areas, because it's multiple AI of the ecosystem? And it's increased. So it's probably about 9 billion in the last quarter. And then in Q1, 12 billion. So like $20 billion have gone into AI in basically 6 months. And then it's continuing to increase. So as kind of thinkers of AI and monitors of like, where is money flowing? Why, you have to ask yourself, like, why is that?
Definitely a great point, especially as we mentioned earlier, the ROI is a really big deal for people to offset. Where is AI applicable? Where is the human applicable? And I see Sam vigorously shaking his head. So go ahead.
So I was just gonna add to that. You're right. There is hype. There is hype, and money's going to chase the hype, and that's just the way VCs and Ps and everyone do. I mean, if they see something that has the opportunity, that has the potential, in the short term, there is the hype and they're going to capitalize on that hype. But there is something in between, like Manju said. I mean, it's not all good and it's not all bad, and it's somewhere in the middle. There is value in what we have. There is value that's going to be developed out of it. And there's going to be value that we're going to see as we start to cross different fields and different technologies as well. And that's going to change over time, and it's going to morph over time. But the values that we're creating today, the companies that are coming up, the tools that we're creating, the capabilities that we're creating are going to be part of that set of toolkits that people are going to have in the future to develop further technologies and the complexity that they're going to have to deal with as we go through this transition.
I mean, going back to the definition that you showed earlier, AI is nothing but something that resembles human decision making, but does a better job, is more efficient and more data driven. So it cannot be relevant suddenly. I agree. It's like there is a hype aspect here, but fundamentally it's going to make, like, if we use it properly, it's going to make decisions better, more efficient, and life better for everyone. So it can be hype.
That's really a great point, as you brought up, if you use it properly. And I know as a senior advisor to the Greek Prime Minister, you're helping with a lot of setting up responsible AI. Can you go a little bit further into using AI properly from a responsible AI perspective?
Yeah, that's a very tricky tricky part about like democratizing AI and deploying it at a larger scale. There are a few different things. One is AI ethics and algorithmic fairness that probably you've all thought about before. How do we ensure that it does not discriminate based on protected characteristics, so on and so forth? There are algorithmic solutions to this problem. There are some safeguards that you can employ to help with that. But there's a second component that I think this crowd would relate better with. It's the environmental and the sustainability aspect here, right? If training a model requires enormous amounts of energy, right? So we need to think more responsibly about that. There's this sustainable data clusters, there's sustainable compute. We need to get more engaged with thinking about sustainability and ethical deployment of AI systems.
Very, Barbara, go
Yeah.
ahead.
I think, well, that's absolutely true, because if you think about the end consumer of AI, right, and the generations, I'm actually one of the people that help facilitate text messaging here. So, there's kids that only have ever text, they never dialed a phone. So there'll be kids that only ever have used AI and never done any manual, anything ever. So if we think about those sets of people globally, then they do care about bias in data. They do care about the fact that, AI doubles power every 100 days. They do care about the impact on the environment of not only the processing power, but the storage, which most people don't talk about on the AI side. So they do care about all those things. So if you're looking at the next generation set of consumers, they're the ones that are going to kind of drive the ESG bias. They're, just the whole more responsible or beneficial AI.
Go ahead.
I think there's definitely a lot of opportunity for sort of responsible AI deployment, especially considering the hype around it. Like in my industry, we see a lot of AI companies handling document processing, right? So you receive a document in an email, it's an AI solution that will go recognize the text, allocate it, and do your basically data entry, which is currently mostly done by humans. But we were just talking earlier that this isn't a problem requiring an AI solution. This is a problem requiring a much more basic data sharing solution, right? And there's at least I see this so often in the logistics industry, and I'm sure it exists everywhere else, where basically because companies don't share data or because there is no infrastructure to share data, you throw AI at it, right? And then a much heavier sort of cost, for that technology than basically providing API access to your data, right? And then the hype around it and all the money flowing into it isn't helping that. So that's definitely an opportunity. I think there's an opportunity there to be a little more maybe responsible and a little bit more efficient with application of AI.
Definitely some good points. I think people forget with AI, behind the scenes, you do need some good data. So good input in is good output. So there's a lot of behind the scenes, and like you said, training the model is really important. There may be some biases right now in the algorithm, so that's just something we have to keep in mind. With that, I want to be mindful of time. We did get some questions on the WOVA app. If you haven't, please type in there. Otherwise, we'll be opening up for Q&A. I got handed a question here for the panel, so we'll switch over to that. How can AI help in improving the accuracy of sales forecasting? Kimon, would you like to take that first?
Yeah, I mean, assuming that the data is there, which is like a big if, but I am assuming that the question says that the data is there, how is AI going to help with that? And my answer is that this is exactly what it was designed to do, right? So traditional models like simple regression type models are not performing great in like noisy data, constantly changing demand, identifying these kinds of patterns, while solutions like neural networks, because of the number of parameters that are there and the complexity of the system that they can learn, are designed to be able to adapt better to uncertainty. And if you have good demand forecasting, you have good sales forecasting, and therefore you can make better downstream decisions.
Definitely great, Sam.
I was just going to add, I agree with everything that you said, but in addition to that, I think if you start to break down what it is that you are having issues forecasting, right? So if you start to use clustering and other things where you break down the reason why sales forecasting is complex is because there are multiple signals that you're seeing in a sales forecast. So it's not a single signal of demand or supply that you're seeing. So what you need to do is, in order for any system or any learning environment to recognize that pattern, is to break down those patterns and to simplify or break down and identify how many patterns are there that you need to pick up. So that's the complexity with the regression algorithms and others. You're limited to parameters that you can look at. With some of the deep learning and ML algorithms, you've got the ability to look at multiple things. But the problem again is the bias that creeps in. So being able to really truly understand and embed some of the knowledge that you know, and this is where the intelligence of humans continues to evolve and come in, is that it's not just the AI, it's how we use the AI that really drives the value of what we do. So if you start to split those apart, you start to be able to then cluster those things and have 5 different patterns that you're modeling. And when you start to overlay that, you start to get what you think is complexity as simplicity from a modeling standpoint. So again, you don't need complex AI to do it. You just need to understand what it is that you're looking at and be able to cut it in the right way to see what it is that you see.
Barbara, I believe you had something.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for that. I am working with a product that does that at some levels, where it has the human interaction piece of it, where you're tagging things, right? It could be done for documents, it could be done for data itself. And it also has their LLM or your large data, or, they call it large language model now. It's gone through many plethoras of names of massive amounts of data. But that human piece of it, like, I understand that in my region of sales, these things are occurring. Like, there's wars happening right now. Okay, so they had the on the slide earlier about the Salton Sea. Okay, right? Wars happening. This is delaying this. So, right, that could be tagged. So then that could be then analyzed. But a human could probably tag that and go, okay, I saw this here. Or it could be as simple as, okay, it rained today, or no, well, we've had 3 earthquakes, big ones here in California. We had 3 big earthquakes. This delayed things at the port potentially, or coming out of the port because you couldn't use the road for some reason. So it's as simple as that, but a human may tag that. An AI may not read enough papers or things or elements, or they may not be reading the US Geological Survey in order to tag information so that it can then be presented as something to make a decision on, even for an AI.
And Robert, I believe you had something to add as well on that.
Yeah, I was just thinking yesterday, was driving to a friend's house for 2 days in a row. My navigation was telling me to exit somewhere else. And just taking me around and around and around in like a really long way, because we figured out what the problem was. We were arguing whether it's Tesla's navigation or Google Maps bugging out, and we realized there's a construction on the road, and the navigation is tagging it as the exit closed. Right? But the exit wasn't closed. For 3 days, it took me around and around and around. And this is exactly the opposite of, a friend of mine sitting next to me is like, dude, just stop going by what it says. The exit's open. Like, we can see it's open, right? And so it wouldn't let me exit. It wouldn't let me get on the freeway. The massive diversion because it was reading some data somewhere that wasn't incorrect. And that goes back to like decision making, right? And how. Anyway, it's funny because it's so primitive, but I think it's like a micro representation of bigger problems. But then I'm sure it's temporary early stage bugs, but it's just, I was thinking about that as you were as you were saying the opposite of that.
Makes sense.
Definitely a good point, especially with a lot of people becoming dependent on AI and systems. What would you say to some of the people who are overly dependent?
Yeah, I wonder how many people took that exit, or how many people were just building this huge traffic jam on the road,
You've seen people just drive into rivers because they say just keep going straight and they go straight into the river. No, that's a definitely good point for sure. So there's a lot of dependency on AI and automation as well that I think we need to be definitely mindful of. Go ahead, Manju.
Yeah, so sales forecasting, demand forecasting, this is how I made my living, right? 25 years implementing SAP, Oracle, and found that even till today, after everything, people go to Excel spreadsheet to cross-validate. And the fundamental reason is when you position an inventory, and if your boss comes and asks, why did you put that inventory? We didn't sell it. He or she needs to explain. They feel comfortable with the pivot table, the data they extracted. But the challenge goes back to what Sam is talking about. World is always changing. Demand signals are changing. Your weathers are changing, like what Barbara said. If you don't capture those change, if your demand situation changes, your inventory positioning situation changes. Now you're going back in time and trying to explain what happened, why you made a decision. This is hard for planners, and they I've seen planners sweat because they have to make these decisions by end of the day or end of the week. There's a paper that I really like, Gartner's paper on planners will be curators, not creators, as in not creating forecast in Excel spreadsheet or overriding what came from SAP, but becoming more curators of looking and overlooking AI to make sure AI is doing better. Because over the last 6 years, we've been observing AI beat not every product line in a given customer, but majority of the product line. And that makes planners uncomfortable because now they have to start relying on something which is more accurate than them because it can scan more data signals. And now we are at a point where we don't spend too much time on algorithms because XGBoost and Serimax and Arima, there's enough of them. You load the system and it'll run 20 in like 10 minutes with NVIDIA chips. We don't worry about those. We worry about what Sam says, right? Which is collect that information. Are we feeding the right demand signals? Can we feed more signals? And if you do this right, it's for the most part, it's going to do a better job. But sometimes, like what Robert said, it's going to go wrong and you have to watch out, right? So, and if you're curious to see more about how this works, we have a booth and we can show you this.
Definitely, and that's Pluto 7 on the side over there. We're going to switch gears. We want to make sure we open up the floor to some Q&A from the audience. So there should be a couple of mic runners here. So if you have a question, please raise your hand and we'll have a mic runner come to you. Okay, we have a question right here. Go ahead. Oh, where? Well, no, okay, we had a mic runner. No, he's not here.
You mentioned, question around how AI may impact future build versus buy discussions. I know this is a little bit of a different topic for the panel, but we're in the process of evaluating a future strategy around a big, robust, old school ERP system and implementing one of those, which, are good, again, robust, but kind of costly, time consuming, and not very agile. So how would you say people and companies should think about how AI may impact our ability to build more effectively, quicker, cheaper, versus buying off the shelf of a large ERP system.
And Jeff, I think Jeff, right? Sorry. Yeah. So it's one of those tough decisions that many executives in enterprises are facing this challenge because there's so many elements of AI and decision making, and decision is a very expensive. If you take the net effect of a poor decision, it could turn out to be very expensive. Take a look at Nike, what happened with a combination of channel strategy and inventory strategy. So coming to the build versus buy, if I look at a pattern of like 100 customers, there are what they're able to eventually segregate is these are decisions which are strategic to company. I do not want to outsource it to an SaaS company or SAP Oracle and say, here's my input, give me the output, and I'm going to trust and start positioning my inventory or my resources as suppliers. There are certain things that they will continue to use, but there are certain decisions they wanted to institutionalize in their enterprise. Institutionalization of information, what they consider core, should be a build. Institutionalization of your human capital knowledge, people retire, they made decisions or forecasting overrides or that needs to be institutionalized in an LLM or a model that you own, because no vendor is going to have two companies look same, or even if they generalize it, it may not work well for you. That's on the build side. So there's a good portion of the companies who are gradually evolving on the build side, especially the mature and advanced ones. Then there is a buy side of it. There are certain decisions like recommendation of products based on web traffic. A lot of it is somewhat generalized. You create the same web page, you have Google Analytics and those kinds of things. So there it might be worth considering a buy versus you trying to build something which Google and a whole bunch of companies have been building for years. So there are those decisions, and you may end up with a combination of both build and buy. But when you look at even for a given function, hope that answers the question. Yeah.
I'll just add, yeah, I just add that I think an angle that a lot of people don't think about specifically in freight forwarding ERP systems, right? Not to get too technical, but is regulation around AI. Now NNR operates globally and you deal with a lot of customs, right? Government regulation and things like that, where, building something where AI may be a factor in terms of building cost. It's also a factor in terms of how it's regulated and how your access to different countries' custom systems is regulated. So it's just there's a lot. I think there's a potential blind sides there with AI being involved in the development of these systems.
So I always say we do three things: build, buy, integrate, right? Who are you going to partner with for other elements around data potentially, right? And the regulatory piece is important on that because then how you share and integrate those data points are important. I agree with Manju on his kind of builds, what's your core IP, what's your core essence there, buying, right, and everything else. And then there's integrating. How are you partnering with other people to utilize data for your internal infrastructure? So you have to have that third piece.
Go ahead.
Maybe I'm oversimplifying the question, but in my mind, AI is just a migration to a new technology. And so how would you migrate to a new technology? Put the two systems side by side, try to understand when they're behaving differently. And the AI system should be transparent enough to explain why it's recommending different things at different times. If it's not, throw it away. Even if it's great, high accuracy, if it's not able to explain the decisions, it shouldn't be used. I think that's my advice. I mean, I was involved in a AI system for procuring for healthcare, again, in Greece. And even if you are amazing at predicting, and they were amazing at predicting, you cannot, if there's no rationale behind it, which connects with the embedding in a common space, despite the complexity, you can always try to understand why the decision was made, right? That's how you build confidence that it will be better than your human decision makers, better than your simple systems, and it will not fail at the edge cases.
Thank you. Great question, Jeff. Thank you. We have a question here in the front. There was a mic.
I'm Gabriella Michael, I'm CIO of Port of Long Beach, and also a computer scientist. I remember it's so exciting to see some of the things that we were talking about decades ago come to life. But I do want to say something, and I'm neither like it's all good or all bad, but we must acknowledge this will change the nature of work. It will change the nature of work while we're in that transformational part. And I feel the supply chain, I would say supply chain optimization a while ago.
Behind you.
Sorry about that. Hopefully people heard, but I'm saying the nature of work will change. And in order to be able to prepare our people in the supply chain and all sectors of it, there was discussion about 70%, of the farmers were replacement machines. Where did they go? I've been in those places. They were desolate. And it took many decades for that to transform. The nature of change that we're doing or will happen with AI is so much faster than the humans that we've been set up to do. For example, I like that you said when you're teaching your students, you're like, no AI tools for the first couple of years because they need to think and analyze. When I was going to school many decades ago, everybody was thinking we're doing software engineering. And I remember Dr. Bernice Foles said, not a single one of you should be planning to become coders and programmers. And now look, decades later, because that will become a commodity. You need to learn how to think, how to take problems, break them into smaller pieces and do it well. So the concern I have is many people looking at, oh, we're going to train our people in AI. I don't want them to train. There was once in McDonald's, they trained the people on how to use the cash registers, but they didn't know how to add or subtract or analyze. So when the power went out, they could not provide change. So we've got to figure out with the AI and the training that we're doing, that we're actually still teaching them that human part so that we can do it. But the nature of work will change. Factories are not going to hire thousands of people. There's going to be lots of people out there that don't have anything to do. And that's how revolutions are made. But I think we in the supply chain have a chance to actually set some standards and do it in a way because it affects the world. But I love all the answers you guys gave. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent point. And we do have a panel tomorrow with Dr. Susandar about higher education and making sure that students are still being educated. So stay tuned for that at the end of the day tomorrow. We have a question right here.
Can we respond to that one
Oh, yes,
question if you
please.
don't
Go ahead,
mind?
Manju.
I do want to thank for asking the question. I want to highlight that, thank you. 80%, if you're familiar with humanoids, Tesla has a humanoid and there's all this, 80% of the money that goes into building those has got to do with designing hands. Think about why that is. If human hands is one of the most complex apart from thinking, if it can do with hands, then the nature of work is changing. The second part is knowledge workers. I re-emphasize this because if you're sitting 6 hours in front of a screen and not moving, you need to worry because it's that critical thinking, it's human interaction, that's higher value. Because a lot of the things people do in front of a screen is content in, content out. Generative AI is starting to do that, and we need to bring that critical thinking. That's where I think even the education system will evolve in the coming time. Thank you.
Thanks for that, especially going back to using our own brains,
Right.
critical thinking, don't just follow the navigation system. Go ahead, Barbara.
So I think that the critical thinking at some levels is lost. That's why intelligence, artificial, like the intelligence is the knowledge, which is kind of the thinking, reasoning, critical thinking. Can a computer really do that? No. But from the human side of it, it can also be an opportunity of potential to make everyone more strategic. So in the energy company, which, we're going through digital transformation there. It's an old school, kind of very entrenched way they do business. We're automating a lot of the data. We're automating a lot of the systems. We're automating a lot of the processes. And then we're going to lay the AI on top. But the point of that is people are now, we're having the conversations at the, at the highest levels, like, how do we make people more strategic so that the AI can do basically whatever, like kind of the menial things AI should do, and people are still going to be knowledge workers? How do we make more strategic level thinkers? And that's kind of a harder question than just like, hey, all these people are going to be replaced with AI. Well, like, who just had 1,000, Paramount TV is gone tomorrow. right? That wasn't an AI issue. Intel is laying off people, you know, like I can go on and on about who's doing what. But like, was that really related to AI? No. That was more a human factor question. So we have to look at how do we make people more strategic, and AI is a tool to help empower people to be that.
Yeah, but there's a very simple answer to the how. Take the master's program at Marshall.
I second that. for sure. Well, with that, we apologize. We are running close to the end of our panel time together. I apologize for not getting to your question, but please, after this, the panelists will be available for some Q&A on the side. But as we're wrapping up our time together, we just want to do a quick wrap up. If there is one thing each of you would like the audience to take away from this session, what would it be? Let's start down the line and do a quick roundtable.
90% of what AI does will be good.
Yeah, I'd say definitely take the master's program.
The master's program sounds good, but my takeaway will be don't be afraid of AI, number one, and number two, when we're going to use these technologies in combination, because we didn't really talk about blockchains or quantum computers, which is going to like take the AI and all this to a whole nother level. Don't be afraid, because all this will be helping to transform us as individuals as well.
Yeah, for me, it's before you think about the how you do something, think about why you're doing the something.
And I think just to go along with that, it's AI is a toolkit at the end of the day. We are just scratching the surface. We are in the initial stages of this. What neural networks and ML and everything else is doing is basically taking what people knew 40 years ago about neuroscience and applying it to neural networks. There is a whole new transformation that's coming above this, where we're not even capturing those aspects of the way the brain works and the plasticity that the brain has and applying it to the algorithms that we have today. So there is going to be that transformation, but that requires compute power that quantum computing and others will provide.
Thank you. Those are definitely great takeaways. We can keep talking about all this, and as we all are learning in this AI transformation journey together. Really, it's been an honor for me to share the stage with you all. Thank you all for your amazing participation, and thank you to the panelists for sharing your insights and expertise. Thank you, everybody.